Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fensky. Jermar Perry and Bryant Antoine are social workers and friends. They graduated together from St. Louis University's Master of Social Work program in May of 2019. And then they launched an initiative aimed at what they say is their life's purpose, helping men of color gain access to mental health resources. They call their group the Village Healing and Writing Circle for Men of Color, and they join us today to tell us about it. So, Jermar Perry, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
And Bryant Antoine, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So, Bryant, let's start with you. I understand you two were the only Black men in your program at SLU. Did you feel just an immediate draw to each other?
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot of times we bring this up in our group, but we're actually not originally from St. Louis. We actually both come from the East Coast. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and Jermar's from Philly. So we have that in common. Both of our partners lived in St. Louis, grew up in St. Louis, and they brought us back. They dragged us back out here.
Boy, those St. Louis natives, you got to watch them. They will do that to you.
Exactly. But even then, I mean, before we even knew all of that, we were big. We were really vocal, just like on campus, and every time we talked, we found things in common. So there was just this natural draw ever since then. We graduated in last year in May of 2019. And we've been close ever since.
So you guys had this friendship, but this is not just a friendship at this point. You've also formed this group together. Jermar, tell me, what led you to say, you know what, we need to do this thing together?
Well, that's a great question. Like Bryant said, not being from here, it's kind of like a culture shock coming from the East Coast and realizing how segregated the middle of the country was. So everywhere, I kind of went, whether it was political events or, even, events that weren't that heavy, I noticed a lack of Black men in the spaces. Before, when I went to SLU, I kind of went into it blindly about social work, not realizing that I would be the only man in most of my classes and definitely one of the only Black men in those spaces. So all of that and not being from here, not having a home base, not having friends that I knew forever, just kind of made me want to see that if there was a need to create a space for Black men to talk about vulnerable issues and to talk about, what's going on in their daily lives and, also share joys and not just tears. So, all of that and a few other things just kind of formulated the group. There was one point where we took a bus trip at SLU to the Capitol one day, and the only Black men on the bus were myself and the bus driver. And I sat on the back of the bus, and I was glad I wasn't driving the bus, but I was also almost in tears by how far we haven't progressed when it came to these things. So all of those things, all of those experiences just kind of made me just want to create something just for Black men or / men of color.
Okay. So you talk about trying to create a space, and creating that space sort of, you need to get some people to come to that space. And as you mentioned, you guys are both transplants. And in St. Louis, it can sometimes be harder to make connections. Bryant, how did you go about finding the people who could help you start this thing?
Yeah, so definitely it took a couple months, right, to get the ball running. I think, we have connections with local organizations. I know Jermar's wife is part of Safe Connections.
That's a great nonprofit that deals with domestic violence issues and things like that.
Exactly. And also just remembering that, even though we are transplants, we do have good connections and networks with people. And, people started hearing about it. We were starting to meet at the Thomas Dunn Learning Center in South City on Gasconade. And it's just, the balls just started getting rolling, and it's snowballed ever since. So
when you say it's snowballed, obviously the coronavirus changes everything in terms of in-person meetings. But what kind of turnout were you getting before that?
Yeah, I mean, we've honestly had a consistent 10 to 12 people monthly,
That's great.
meeting,
So that's kind of a
committing
core
their
group, same people talking together.
Right.
same and new people. I don't know if you want to add, Jermar.
Ooh, that are you guys both still there?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't know what that was, but hey, we're doing these interviews remotely these days. Has the same complications that trying to have a group meeting remote can sometimes have. Jermar, if you wanted to add to what Bryant was saying, it's a group of about 10 to 12 people.
Yeah, so we also were able to reach out to these conferences in the area before everything started. So one of the times, we came together and we figured, there was a lot of street black men coming to the group. But we also wanted to reach out to some of our LGBTQ plus brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of did a conference one day. Bryant and I did a conference for Williams and Associates, who does really, really great work when it comes to black men and getting them tested for HIV and a bunch of other great work that they do in the community. And I was able to go to that conference and link with a few of the LGBTQ men who used their resources, and some of them started coming and also bringing others. And it was big for us to not just have straight black men in the circle, but also all self-identified black men in the circle. So that was also helpful. And that was one of the ways.
Was that initially a little uncomfortable for anybody to say, this is not just for gay men, this is not just for straight men, we're going to have everybody all together?
Well, we also make sure that, before we spoke about these things, we kind of laid the rules and laws down about, being welcoming and having a safe space for everyone. And if you aren't, if people aren't with that, then this might not be a space for them. But also we were really strategic about who we invited and, making sure that, people knew that and that this had to be not just about some of the parts, but all of the parts. And making sure that they felt safe. And I know, from speaking to them that, initially it probably was a little awkward, not knowing who's who or not knowing, to feel safe for them. But hopefully, as we've worked over time and over the last few months, those have become like, not just our friends, but our brothers too.
That's great. And Jermar, we're going to have to call you back. We're not liking the sound of your phone line. So we're going to do that, and we're going to talk to Bryant here while we get you back on the line. But if you're listening to this conversation and you're a man of color who has dealt with some of these issues, we do want to hear from you, and we're particularly interested in what has helped you with some of those mental health issues. You can give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can also send us a tweet at STL on air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. And we're talking about the Village Healing and Writing Circle for Men of Color. So, Bryant, can you walk us through what would happen at a typical meeting of this group? And again, we're talking pre-coronavirus when you guys could meet in person.
Yeah, of course. So basically what happens is we keep it really light, in the beginning. We have snacks and we keep like the first 15 or 20 minutes open so that people can kind of enjoy and just remembering that people are coming back from work or you're leaving work or leaving from home so that we can network and talk. But then as we get right into the circle, the main point of the check-in after we go down the ground rules is just making sure that people have an opportunity to voice their joys and their pains. And I'll tell you now, our spaces, our time is pretty much, it's like 2 hours long. But I'll tell you, we spend a lot of time talking about our joys and pains. People come in carrying so much weight, just for being a black man and working in different spaces and dealing with, what we deal with on a regular basis, that it gives an opportunity for everybody to kind of lay it out and really heal from it.
What would be some specific things you'd see people laying out? Something that's happened to somebody in the last week, or more these bigger picture issues of life?
Yeah, I mean, anything. I think it runs a gamut. It could be anything as little as, an interaction they had at work, to, hearing about somebody getting shot, or losing a family member. So like it really runs the gamut, it isn't necessarily things that happen immediately. People bring up, instances of that might have happened 10, 15 years ago. But they also are able to just kind of lay it all out and vent.
So it's just something that someone is ready to talk about. That's kind of the criteria there.
Exactly. And then the other end of it as well is, it's a healing and writing circle. So what we'll do is we'll also kind of carve out a space for people to share any projects that they're working on, carve out a space for people to write, listen to music, and share out when they're ready.
And Jermar, I understand you're back with us. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hopefully my connection is a lot better.
Yes, that does sound a lot better. I'm so glad to hear your voice. Writing is a big part of this group. It's right there in the name. What's the thinking on why writing is important for this kind of work?
Well, it's something we kind of stumbled upon all of this. At first, leaving, kind of being bored last summer with just coming home from work every day and just going home. That was also a part of it. So initially I kind of wanted a space for social workers of color, and then that kind of grew to having just a group for men to write and writers, since that was something I was picking back up again after years. And then I kind of one day kind of forged all of those things in a name. So the writing piece came from just knowing Black writers. I reached out to one who comes to our group frequently initially about starting this, and he was all for it, the writing portion. But then I just kind of brought it all together. So, I felt like, writing could be therapeutic in some ways and kind of go hand in hand. And honestly, it was kind of for selfish reasons, because I was also picking up the craft of writing again and the love for it. And I kind of wanted a group to hold me accountable with that, as we all kind of healed from the things that we go through, on a daily.
Do you give the group a writing prompt, or is it more journaling where people can write about whatever?
It's a little bit of both. So, when we were holding the groups in person, it was more so, the writing prompt was how we ended things. And then, there would be, there's also a share out. So the thing we probably consistently do the most is we do focus a lot on healing a lot of times, depending on how things are going and the number of people that come. Most of the things that we've done focus-wise has been on sharing out pieces. And recently, the group has decided they want to release a book of all the stuff that we've been working on over the course of our lives together. So
wow.
This was our writing. Yeah.
That's great. And, in addition to this book, you guys are just so busy. You both also started a podcast that goes hand in hand with this group. This is called the Black Men Tell Village Podcast. Who are some of the people you featured on that, Bryant?
Yeah, so at first we thought it would be important to kind of extend what we were doing in the healing and writing circle. So we started it off with us, featured, and then we moved it to other members of the group. So Bobby Free Williams, Victor Farwell, and then we moved it to other individuals from outside the group. So we featured most recently Sir Eddie C., who is a hip-hop artist out of Belleville, Illinois, in the St. Louis region.
We've actually had him on our show. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
So you've got some of these people coming in for interviews, but you also open up about some really heavy personal subjects yourself. Bryant, I understand you even talked about your mother's death in a podcast episode. Was that hard to open up about?
Of course. I think, it's been, over 10 years, and my mother died due to homicide and intimate partner violence. So it's always hard to open up about that. Thank you. But I felt like just to get the ground running with, the theme that month was, heard around the holidays and thinking about people you've lost. And I think it was important to get the ball rolling on, the podcast to start with that, so people understand that we were coming with heavy stuff, and people felt, the vulnerability that we were trying to kind of convey through the podcast. So It was very important.
It's nice to hear that in addition to helping other people with this group, you're also really doing some of the work yourself. Jermar, you told our producer this has been like an awakening for you. How so?
Mhm. Well, I spent a large part of my life at kind of like dead-end jobs, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, just trying to figure it out, going through the process that a lot of people go through. So this has kind of been like a new awakening for me. It feels like I finally figured out what I want to do with the rest of my life, which is a great, great feeling when you go through life and you finally hit that plateau where you're like, oh, this is it. You're putting together all of those things. I got my bachelor's degree in journalism in 2010 from Temple University back in Philadelphia. And after that, I had to figure out what I wanted to do, and it took me a while. From there, I kind of worked with kids at an all-black mentoring Afrocentric program. So all those things kind of have brought me to where we are today, and what we're doing. All those experiences, all those not knowing, what you're doing from day to day, the dead-end jobs, the getting into college, the dropping out of college, the whole experience, just kind of brought me to where we are today.
Yeah, that's so great to that moment where you find that calling. And in our last minute here, I do want to also mention something. Your group partnered on a campaign with the group All Blacks Creative and Sir Eddie C., who we mentioned earlier. It's called the Little Black Boy Campaign after Sir Eddie C.'s track. The initial goal was to raise $1,000 to help 10 men get therapy sessions. You're now above $7,000. So real quick here, Bryant, what are you going to do with all that money?
Yeah, so it's a lot of money. We actually hit 8,000 this morning. So it's been fantastic, but it's going to go to what we initially pushed for, and that's getting free mental health for Black men, making sure that they have an opportunity to try it, to heal. I really appreciate everyone who's donated. It's been really, really amazing, and we're forever grateful.
That's a great thing to see. Well, and it was great to hear about the work you guys are doing. So, Bryant, Antoine, thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having us.
And Jermar Perry, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having us. This was awesome.
And these two wonderful men are co-founders of the Village Healing and Writing Circle for Men of Color. If you want to look that up, we'll have links on our website, stlpublicradio.org. Their podcast is Black Men Tell Village Podcast. And I do want to go out of today's show with that track we mentioned. This is Lil Black Boy, and this is by the St. Louis artist Sir Eddie C.
Yeah, shine like the sun. Yeah, shoot for the stars. The universe shooting at us. James Brown. Look, I'm black and I'm proud. Yeah, say that it's louder and I can't wait to do this shit from the crowd.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.